there on Mahmoud Khalil. Does the administration believe that it needs to charge a green card holder with a crime to be eligible for deportation?
Well, in fact, Secretary Rubio reserves the right to revoke the visa of Mahmoud Khalil, and I'm glad you brought this up. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act, the Secretary of State has the right to revoke a green card or a visa for individuals who serve or are adversarial to the foreign policy and national security interests of the United States of America. And Mahmoud Khalil was an individual who was given the privilege of coming to this country to study at one of our nation's finest universities and colleges. And he took advantage of that opportunity, of that privilege, by siding with terrorists. Hamas terrorists who have killed innocent men, women, and children. This is an individual who organized group protests that not only disrupted college campus classes and harassed Jewish American students and made them feel unsafe on their own college campus, but also distributed pro-Hamas propaganda, flyers with the logo of Hamas. That is what the behavior and activity that this individual engaged in. And I have those flyers on my desk. They were provided to me by the Department of Homeland Security. I thought about bringing them into this briefing room to share with all of you, but I didn't think it was worth the dignity of this room to bring that pro-Hamas propaganda. But that's what this individual distributed on the campus of Columbia University. And this administration is not going to tolerate individuals having the privilege of studying in our country and then siding with pro-terrorist organizations that have killed Americans. We have a zero-tolerance policy for siding with terrorists, period. Peter Ducey.
Thank you, Caroline. So you said that the Dow dropping and dropping and dropping is a period of transition. You're sure nobody here at the White House shorted the Dow?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. But is there any concern here that it's going to be harder to ask certain federal workers to retire if they look at their retirement accounts and they're getting robbed every day?
Well, I'm glad you brought up workers, because that's exactly who President Trump is looking out for with his America First trade policy and his America First economic agenda. And if you look at, there's great indication to be optimistic about where the economy stands. And the American people, investors, CEOs, small business owners, but most importantly workers, should bet on President Trump, because his tariff policies, what he envisions is reciprocity, fair trade practices where American workers are put first and are no longer ripped off by foreign countries all over this world.
Can we talk about Canada? What is the status of President Trump having a conversation with Mark Carney? We have seen the president use the term governor to refer to Justin Trudeau. Will that moniker also go to Mr. Carney going forward? And is the decision to increase the tariffs, is that based on a specific economic metric that he looked at? Is it impulse? How would you describe his reaction to Canada?
The president has not yet spoken to Mr. Carney, not since I checked, which was just moments ago. But certainly his phone is always open to leaders who wish to speak with him. As for the tariffs, the president made his position on this quite clear with the statement that he put out. And it was a retaliatory statement due to the escalation of rhetoric that we've seen out of Ontario, Canada. The president saw the Premier, Doug Ford, make an egregious and insulting comment threatening to shut down electricity for the American people, for hardworking American families. He made that threat. The president saw that and has an obligation and a responsibility to respond accordingly and represent the interests of the American people. So he has made the decision to add a 25% tariff. So now steel and aluminum tariffs will come into effect tomorrow at the rate of 50%. And our steel and aluminum industries have actually applauded these tariffs because, again, they know it's going to grow their industry here. It's going to allow them to export more steel that is made right here in the United States with American workers.
Egregious and insulting are your words here, but that's what many Canadian leaders have said about the actions President Trump has taken toward Canada. And what do you think the timeline is for speaking to Mr. Carney? Because normally a sitting president speaks to a close ally very quickly when there's new leadership.
Well, the president is, again, responding to the fact that Canada has been ripping off the United States of America and hardworking Americans for decades. If you look at the rates of tariffs across the board that Canadians have been imposing on the American people and our workers here, it is egregious. In fact, I have a handy-dandy chart here that shows not just Canada, but the rate of tariffs across the board. If you look at Canada, since you brought it up, American cheese and butter, nearly 300% tariff. You look at India, 150% tariff on American alcohol. You think that's helping Kentucky bourbon be exported into India? I don't think so. 100% tariff on agricultural products from India. Look at Japan, tariffing rice, 700%. President Trump believes in reciprocity, and it is about dang time that we have a president who actually looks out for the interests of American businesses and workers. And all he's asking for at the end of the day are fair and balanced trade practices, and unfortunately, Canada has not been treating us very fairly at all over the past several decades. To the woman in the purple, because I saw you were making a face at my previous answer, so what's going on?
Actually, I have a couple of questions. At the core of pro-Palestinian protests on college campuses and elsewhere is a demand to end the war in Gaza, a goal that this administration actually supports and has pursued. So why has this not been acknowledged or highlighted even?
Because these colleges and these protests have again put out Hamas propaganda. The flyers that have been distributed call for violence. The flyers that have been distributed have the logo of an organization that has held Americans hostage, that murdered innocent babies, that murdered men, women, and children. They are a designated foreign terrorist organization, and we are not going to tolerate non-citizens, foreigners who come here on a visa engaging in such behavior, siding with terrorists. And the Secretary of State reserves the authority to revoke the green card or the visa of an individual who serves as an actually, it says right here, reasonable grounds to believe that the alien's presence or activities in the United States would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences to the United States. And I think siding with Hamas makes that quite clear. Secretary Rubio exercised that authority, and we fully believe that we are going to move forward with more arrests, as President Trump previewed in his statement yesterday. Ed.
Yeah, thanks.
Go ahead.
So are there conversations between the administration and the Canadians going on over this tariff? Because the Ontario Premier says the next step is to cut off electricity to the U.S.
And the president put out a statement after seeing those comments and said that it would be there would be grave consequences imposed on Canada if they think about shutting off electricity for the United States of America and our citizens. And the president is also determined to ensure that we are depending on American electricity, not the electricity production of foreign nations, including our allies in Canada. As for conversations, there is continued correspondence between the president's team, particularly Secretary Lutnick, and the Canadians as well.
If we could just step back for a second. When President Trump last addressed the BRT when he was on the campaign trail, his big push was on tax cuts. He's going there today as he's proposing tax hikes in the form of tariffs.
Not
and
true.
I'm curious
He's not doing
why
that.
he's prioritizing that over the tax cuts.
He's actually not implementing tax hikes. Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American people, and the president is a staunch advocate of tax cuts. As you know, he campaigned on no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security benefits. He is committed to all three of those things, and he expects Congress to pass them later this year.
I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have.
That's
They
it.
don't get charged on foreign companies, they get charged on the importers.
And ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen in decades, as I said at the beginning, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press. Lindsay, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. Referring to Mahmoud Khalil, The president has said this is the first of many arrests like this. Does the administration have a rough estimate of how many arrests you're planning to make similar?
I don't have an estimate. I do know that DHS, based on very good intel that they have gathered at the direction of the president's executive order, which made it very clear to the Department of Homeland Security that engaging, as I said, in anti-American, anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas protests will not be tolerated. So since the president signed that executive order and since Secretary of Known has taken the oath at DHS, they have been using intelligence to identify individuals on our nation's colleges and universities, on our college campuses, who have engaged in such behavior and activity, and especially illegal activity. And so I don't have a readout on how many arrests will come, but I do know that DHS is actively working on it. And I also know that Columbia University has been given the names of other individuals who have engaged in pro-Hamas activity, and they are refusing to help DHS identify those individuals on campus. And as the president said very strongly in his statement yesterday, he is not going to tolerate that, and we expect all America's colleges and universities to comply with this administration's policy.